is one of my, or was one of my professors when I was a student and studied at LMU. And that's why I'm especially happy and delighted to welcome him here. I remember that we were talking about Professor Fischer and his work a long time ago, also with Ajay and some other colleagues. Now it's really nice to have you, Professor Fischer, so a warm welcome. And let me introduce Professor Fischer's profile in a nutshell. It's just a nutshell. He has done much more, but yeah, Professor Fischer is a full professor of educational science and educational psychology at the University of Munich, and he is the speaker of the Munich Center of the Learning Sciences, an interdisciplinary collaboration of more than 30 research groups, focusing on advancing research on learning. So he served as a president of the International Society of the Learning Sciences and is a member of the Bavarian Academy of Sciences. So his research focuses on how people learn to collaborate and engage in scientific reasoning and argumentation, as well as in diagnostic reasoning. So, for example, my master's degree was in one of his projects in which we it was not diagnosing, but we learned in that project how to break bad news to patients, and we trained medical students. So it was really very exciting. His settings of research include computer supported collaborative learning and simulation-based learning environments in secondary school and higher education. So very much relevant, excuse me, for us. And with respect to guidance, he is interested in how scaffolding and scripts can make social interaction more beneficial for learning. And this is a small nutshell of Dr. or Professor Fischer's profile. He has a lot of publications, thousands citations of his work. And yeah, one more time, Professor Fischer, it's an honor to have you here, and I'm handing over to you, and we are really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Meltem. Also, thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be able to speak to you this morning. Here is it the morning. It was an easy travel this time. I will try to start sharing my screen. I would like to invite you to interrupt me at any time. So I prepared, a talk about learning to collaborate and collaborating to learn, with a specific focus on simulation, because I also saw this as one of the strong points of your work, of the work of some of you, I would say. And I would really like to discuss with you around this. Interrupt me at any point if you feel, well, we know all this. If I go into some detail, I can speed up. And it would be great if there is some time, this time or another time, to also speak a little bit more about your work, and maybe discuss some of your work also in some detail, so that I also will be able to learn about what you are doing in more detail. Okay, I will try to share my screen. I think I need an admission of you, of the host. Yes.
Yeah. Kripa, I think you're the host. Could you give Professor Fischer permission to share the screen?
Yeah, sorry.
So, are you able to see the screen? The first slide, is that, can you see that?
Yes, it's perfectly visible.
Okay. So, there are these two sides of the use of collaboration in educational settings that have always fascinated me. That is that we, well, in a way, learn to collaborate from the very first moment of our lives, even before we are really are able to interact with others in talking. and we learn a lot about social skills and so on. But we need to further learn these skills if we go into professional situations. Our basic social skills are typically not enough to master certain professional encounters and situation. But we also use collaborative learning, so social learning processes, to advance complex skills in education, in starting in primary school, but this is even true for higher education and continuing education. And so let me see what I need to do here. So one of the initial reasons for the tradition of collaborative learning to emerge was this. So we had a lot of, well, this type of teacher-led instruction in schools and universities. And people wanted to see something else because they felt, well, maybe this is good for very simple skills, like for factual knowledge acquisition, but not so much for learning problem solving, diagnosing, intervening in educational situations and so on. So it's more like these 2, 3, up to 8 people in small groups. This is what people typically consider as collaborative learning. Sometimes they have a computer with them, sometimes they don't. But this is what I was talking about when I was talking about the professional responsibilities. Here you see a medical doctor talking to a patient or to a colleague, we don't know here. You see a teacher in a classroom situation. You can also imagine the teacher collaborating with other teachers. Not sure how this is in India. In Germany, some teachers would say it's really hard to imagine because we don't do it. Collaboration of teachers in school.
Professor Fischer, on the screen, we're stuck on the first slide. For some reason, the slides are not moving.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you for letting me know. I don't know why this is happening. I will do it again. I will share again.
Yes, so we were seeing the, not the presentation mode, but the editing.
Oh, really?
Mode,
I don't know.
yeah.
I couldn't see it on the presentation mode also. I could see the slides and the slide bar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's try again.
Now it's a presentation mode. Perfect.
Okay, so you see the professional responsibilities?
Yes, we can see them. Thank you.
Sorry for this. So you have not missed a lot.
Yeah.
You have missed this picture of collaborative learning and this one of the more teacher-led one. And so this is professional responsibilities of the medical doctors and of the teacher. And there is one important term that we are using in this context that is called approximation of practice. That is that we learn in some educational situations and we learn to prepare people, people learn to prepare themselves for later on professional responsibilities that are not fully clear in many situations during the learning phase at universities or other places. And so we need to simulate several different situations, sequences of more or less authentic tasks. And the goal is not so much in this approach, at least in the approximation of practice approach, is not so much to become as authentic as possible, because sometimes it's even better not to send people to the situation in practice immediately, but to prepare them for these situations in kind of reduced versions of these complex situations. Like what Meltem initially said, breaking bad news. If you have a medical student, if they're done with their studies, they are maybe 26 and they tell people of the age of, let's say, 50 or 70 or, well, sometimes 30, that they have really bad diagnosis. And so they need to be prepared for this. At least people think that this is a good idea, to prepare them earlier, before they enter this situation, so they can focus on certain aspects, which is very hard to do if you are in an emotionally loaded, in a highly complex situation. So using simulations, and sometimes things are running too fast in situations, or they are too slow, you cannot see them, or they are hidden, they are latent things, but you can help them to focus on, help learners to focus on these things in simulations if you design them well. Is that clear so far? Can you hear me and see everything? So I would now enter into, well, this was Meltem. I think maybe this was even earlier than you came to us when we started with this work on where we used little text cases in educational sciences and built little text simulations where students, in the text, we describe cases of students who had issues with their self-regulation and motivation. And our educational students sitting around here, these three, they were asked to analyze these cases and apply theoretical knowledge, so knowledge from theories on motivation, like attributional theory and so on. So they learned about theories in their study program, and they applied it to these specifically designed but relatively authentic cases. And they were asked to do this together. So we were asking them to do this in groups of 3 and to argue around this case. So to suggest a kind of explanation or an intervention, and to, well, question this explanation, or also question the intervention. This is what we did later, much later, then with video simulations in teacher continuing education. Even so, these are well, relatively young teachers from in adult education in Tübingen, so another city in Germany. So they learned about, so most of these are English teachers in continuing education settings. And they learned to analyze lessons, English lessons, with respect to their instructional approach. So is this a more an apprenticeship approach? Is this direct instruction? And so on. And they learned to improve these, to make suggestions, interventions to help these teachers to improve their lessons. And they do this alone. So they watch videos of real English lessons, and then they they try to do this analysis and analyze, well, which apprenticeship elements are in this real recordings, in these recording of real sessions, I would say. And then they do it together. They try to explain it to each other, what they came up with as explanations and suggestions. This is a full-scale simulator in medical education. We started early with this, as early as 2004. And this puppet is driven not fully by a computer, but by a human being, by a chief doctor, actually, in a hospital. So this is an expensive simulation. And this is for medical students and for medical doctors who are already in practice to learn crisis resource management skills. So this is an intensive care unit, and this is an operation room, but if you, but the patient can become bad, as they call it. Yeah, is there any question, or is I hear some? No? Okay, I continue. You interrupt me whenever you feel you have a question. So, so this is, many medical students told us, well, this is once in a lifetime. You can, because this is so expensive, students can only be in this simulator 1 or 2 times during their studies. And they are in this room with the puppet, with this full-scale puppet here, 1 or 2 times during a workshop of 2 days, These are 16 students or 16 to 20 students participating, and they run scenario after scenario, and 2 of them always work together in this room, together with some medical assistant staff who are always there, who know the environment, but they are there in the role of anesthesiologists, for example, and they need to, well, to control, to drive these, to control this situation. And it's more about, it's not so much about which quantity of a medication is inserted into this puppet, which is possible, but it's more the communication situation around. So is the communication done well? Are people really working in a situation of crisis? Are they working on the right things, or are they working on the same things and other things are neglected? So this is the situation here. And the issue where I'm a psychologist, because why we were called in or were invited to participate is the following. Most students, most of the time, sit in a video room, in the so-called video room, where they have the transmission of a kind of this of a live recording into another room. So they see what their colleagues do who are in the simulation, and they were asked normally to note what they observe, which strategies of crisis for the crisis resource management their colleagues implement well, which could have been implemented but were not implemented, and so on. And then later on, there is still a debriefing room, still another room where this chief doctor is sitting, and then they discuss, or they were supposed to discuss at least, around what happened in this scenario, what happened in the scenario that ran. And well, not sure what would happen in India in this situation. In Germany, for example, in this debriefing situation, there is only the chief doctor talking. No one else dares to say a word. There is such a power distance between a medical student and a professor still. It's unfortunately not the case in psychology, so there is not enough power distance sometimes. But in medicine there is. So no one would dare to interrupt this chief doctor and so on. So there was not much of collaboration, also not much of collaboration in this room. People were sitting there observing, taking some notes, but they were not daring to discuss this later on. And this is the final scenario that we're currently working on. We currently have a research unit on simulations comparing medicine and teacher education, so medical education and teacher education. And our project here is about medical medical students basically learning to collaborate. And we learned that this was not at all in the focus of medical education so far. That if you enter into a role of a specialist like an internist or a radiologist, you collaborate with the other, let's say, subdiscipline. They call it even a discipline. So it's an interdisciplinary kind of collaboration, and you need certain skills. But which? So is it? This is why I said in the beginning, it's really, so your basic social skills that you acquire early in your life are not enough for this type of collaboration. You need a lot of knowledge, especially what we call meta-knowledge on the other discipline. So you need to know something about the others to be able to hand them over the right type of information. So this is what we use as a simulation then here, where the internist reads a health record, then there is a kind of interaction with a simulated radiologist. Even we built a simulated radiologist after analyzing the situation quite intensely. And then there is a case solution, so a kind of diagnosis that is done only by the internist. So this is a special type of collaboration, but this is quite often the case in many professions as we observe it. So it's not that 2 people or more people decide something together, but there is one person responsible for the decision in the end, or for the diagnosis, or for a therapy, an intervention, a suggestion for an intervention, but he consults with several others. And there is a phase where they do this diagnosis together. And so the main point of collaboration, this is on the right side here, And this is a really authentic simulation. So people so these doctors in the hospital, they typically don't see each other. They even don't know each other. So sorry, I'm not sure why this is moving on always. So this is the interface for their interaction. Typically, the internist asks for a radiology investigation, so a test, basically like a CT or an X-ray or an MRT, and he needs to share some information with the radiologist. If certain information is not shared, the radiologist will not conduct this test for several reasons, for which I will come back later. So this is basically the main interface for collaboration. And if they fail here, then sometimes they have a phone call or a little video conference. And if it's even more complicated, then sometimes they meet. But this is really rare in the clinical practice. So these are basically the collaboration situation that I wanted to talk about, and I would now go into what we think good collaboration or good collaborative learning at least is. Not sure if you are familiar with the ICAP model. We use this a lot. We think this is a great heuristic for categorizing different types of learning activities. And in the first slide that I missed to show in the first attempt, so the teacher-led instruction, we have a lot of passive activities. So you can observe. It's not about cognitive things between the ears, but things that you can, if you look at it, you can directly see it. There is someone listening to a teacher or to a partner's contribution. This is called a passive activity, which is a strange term, but this is the term that Mikichi is using in her ICAP framework. And there's active activity that starts from when someone takes notes or paraphrase something or give an answer to a factual question. So it's still with the learning material and only the learning material. It's not going beyond, but it's already some activity going on. And then you have the constructive activities, which goes beyond the given learning material. So there is some creativity already in that. And you can still observe this. So there is someone using information that goes beyond the learning material, that comes from a place between his or her ears, most probably, an idea, a reflection, a kind of evaluation or something. So this is called constructive. And then interactive means it's a constructive activity, but several people do this together. So one person in a group is going beyond the given learning material, includes the learning material, builds on the learning material, goes beyond, and the other one build on the learning material and these additional ideas of the learning partner. This is the basic setting. So it goes beyond, much beyond the given learning material. Underlying cognitive process, I will not go into detail. Mikichi has detailed this and analyzed this a lot. Well, basically cognitive processes are not visible, and it's also hard to catch them and to measure them. And it's also very different for the learners themselves to observe them because they are not conscious. But basically, you can see in these different categories of activities, you see different types of cognitive activation and cognitive processes with higher level and higher quality level of cognitive processes coming with higher levels in this hierarchy of activities. So I'm happy also to discuss with you, but we use this a lot in several places. Also teachers have an easy time to grasp this because they feel that's natural. Yeah, this is what we can observe. And it's not about we need to speculate what is happening in our learners' brains or minds. This is a kind of heuristic that helps them to get closer. So, and the hypothesis is then that if you have learning activities on the interactive level, they help you to learn better than constructive, than active, and then passive. So there was a need to differentiate that a little bit because of research in the last decade or so, or well, yeah, since 2009. And one important thing is that, of course, if you look at efficiency and you want to, well, just help people to learn a couple of factual knowledge or vocabulary things, then this active and passive level often is enough. Well, for efficiency reason, it's much faster often. This takes longer time, it's more effort and so on. It's also more work for teachers often. But for problem solving, for skills, for competences, let's say, you need to move onto this level. And so this is what I also could skip if you think, well, we are aware of how we could initiate this interactive level. And I could go into some detail if you think it would be helpful to go there.
Yes, so we appreciate every bit of knowledge you could share with us, Professor Fischer. So please feel free to share everything what you can share in our session. Yeah,
thank you. Then I hope that, yeah, okay, we will then maybe stop at some point. So one of the most effective social process for learning is explanation. And so there is a lot of research on explanation in the literature on explanation and self-explanation and so on. But in a social situation, one of the surprising results in meta-analysis was that explainers typically learn more than receivers of explanations. This is, of course, not always true, but the medium explainer learns more than the medium receiver of explanations. And there are also some good reasons for, or some good explanations for this phenomenon. What we know is that self-generated solutions function better than the explainer. So if the explainer, him or herself, have to develop the explanation for someone, then it's typically more adaptive, and the process leading to adaptive explanation is typically generating interesting cognitive and metacognitive processes, so it's improving learning. And receivers of explanations, this was one of the findings that also, well, now we say, well, that's clear, but when it came up, then people were really surprised, because a lot of learning situations, we use these learning situations where just there is an explanation, and then we hope that the learners, the receivers of these explanations, will at some point apply this by themselves, but this is not working. So receivers of explanation benefit much more if they are able to apply these explanations themselves in a situation that follows, and not only listen to it. So this is now again more because receivers of explanations are on the passive level, if you wish, and as long as you keep them on this passive activity level, then explanation, and the explainer is the one who is doing constructive and even interactive work. So explanation should rather be a process that is interactive, then you have the best results of it. Thought-provoking questions. So often teachers, even in higher education, ask for factual questions rather than thought-provoking questions. Thought-provoking questions require the individual to process and go beyond the given material. So we are then on the constructive level. And if I am the questioner and I ask you a thought-provoking question and you respond to this question and then move on by formulating a new question that even moves beyond my question, then we are on this interactive level that triggers or that facilitates this very high level cognition and high level learning. Resolving cognitive discrepancies, this was somehow overestimated a little bit by the early literature on collaborative learning, where people thought, well, this is the real motor of collaborative learning, that people get into this kind of social cognitive conflict. I know more than another one, or have a more appropriate scientific understanding of a phenomenon, for example, day and night cycle. One learner is already understanding this, the other is not. So this is more the Piagetian tradition. But then in research on collaborative learning, people found that these cognitive conflicts, or these social cognitive conflicts, do not very often emerge. Typically, learners try to avoid them even. And if they see, okay, we are not agreeing on this, they move to another topic. They are not engaging on this emotionally risky level of collaboration. So therefore, if it's working, if you can have this, the trust, the mutual trust, then it can be the motor of collaborative learning, but it's often not working by itself. So argumentation is something, if you, and I will show you in a minute how argumentation can be facilitated in these types of simulated environments. Argumentation is a process of resolving these social cognitive conflicts. If you guide this process so that you have counterclaims and evidence-based reasoning, drawing conclusions and things like that, then you move into this higher level cognition area. Peer feedback, one of the very successful social processes that have been investigated in the last 15, 20 years or so. A lot of studies and also meta-studies on this. It's of great importance that peer feedback is based on criteria that learners understand. So you need to work before you have this peer feedback. You need to have to develop criteria and explain these criteria and let the learners apply, give feedback to them so that they really understand the criteria on which the peer feedback should be based. It's important that feedback comes from several peers, better 5 than 1, yeah, or better even 10 than 2. So because the more, it's not the more, but if you have more peer feedback, then it approaches feedback of an expert or of an expert teacher quite closely. So and it can be used for assessment then even, and not only for learning. And it should be on the process rather than the outcome level with respect to more complex tasks. This is feedback theory, so it should rather be on the different steps and what was right and what was wrong in these different steps leading to a complex outcome instead of the outcome itself. Modeling of cognition, you can, the social processes I just introduced, if you can also think of them as being modeled by someone else. So there are learners who are good in questioning, good in explaining, good in elaborating, good in sharing ideas, and you can use these learners as models for others to develop these skills. And then this is highly effective. Modeling is highly effective social learning process. Also, if you use think aloud or let people draw little concept maps of their thinking, then this is really, can be really helpful for learning of others. So this, I think, my claim here is if you use one or several of these processes in a collaborative learning environment, the learning processes and the learning outcome will typically increase, will improve. The question is, does this work spontaneously? Is it enough to put people into groups or not? And this is, again, this case-based environment. We expected this is a transition diagram, so no worries if you don't know these types of diagrams. So you have an argument in the beginning, and you have a counter argument, and you have a kind of integration. This was our ideal model, how an interaction here in this situation, how an argumentation should look like. So someone would write an analysis, which is an argument, an explanation, and some even 2 counter arguments, yeah, because we have 3 learners here. And then there is an integration by, for example, this initial learner here, revising his or her explanation, his initial argument. So this would be an ideal thing. This is not empirically, but this is an ideal thing. You have 20% arguments, you have like around 40% counter arguments, and also integrations. And you have good transitions, so there is no argument that is not followed by a counter argument. So this is, well, this was the ideal, and this is how these online discussions looked like then. They are still looking a little bit like this. What we did is we used the text that they wrote in their analysis and analyzed it just to show this a little bit what our method was. So we segmented these texts and then categorized these texts according to coding schemes with in this case 3 dimensions, on a content level, on an argumentation level, and also on an interactivity level, let's say how much they refer to each other. So this just to have a glimpse here. But this is what we found. We have a lot of arguments, a lot of monologues, let's say, explanations, and hardly any counter argument in this situation, even though there was a lot to discuss about these initial explanations, but they just didn't do. So the question, and this is also what we found with most of the other scenarios that I showed to you, so that they, if we look into, well, I will not go back to this, but you can imagine this full-scale simulator. Students who were sitting in this video room, they were looking at this and they were not talking. They were taking some notes. And then there was a time when they walked over to this other room. They were not talking, they were silent. And in the room, they were also silent because the doctor was speaking. So there was, although it was expected, there was no collaboration in this sense, no peer collaboration at all. Although it could have happened, but it didn't. And similar things are true for the other simulations that I showed to you. So what can be done about this? There are two basic forms of pedagogical intervention in computer-supported collaborative learning that I think are worthwhile to consider here. One is support for self-regulation of groups. Yeah? So you give groups information. Yeah, you're on the wrong track. Sorry, you need to think it over. And there are so-called cognitive awareness tools and social awareness tools. I will be with them in a minute. And there is more invasive, I would say. It's not just invasive interventions or pedagogical approaches like collaboration scripts and community building environments. I will focus on collaboration scripts because this is also our main focus in research. But let me first show the awareness tools. So these are also some of the initial awareness tools that were around. So you can see these people speaking, and you see these little lamps, and this awareness tool here, this table just shows, because there are little microphones at every place, and it just shows the amount of talk that comes from this direction. And you see, well, this is maybe a gender stereotype, that here the woman talked a lot more than the others. And so if a goal could be, this is a more equal distribution of time for talking, because we know the one who is arguing, who is externalizing his or her thoughts, typically learns a lot. If the explainer learns more than those who receive the explanation, so it should be more equally distributed. The question is this enough? And we see for many groups this is not enough, so they simply just don't know what they can do with this information. On the right hand side, you see a social awareness tool where from time to time learners are asked to evaluate the collaboration with the others on an individual basis, and you see how you are evaluated by the others, yeah, as friendly or not so friendly, as productive, not so productive. And ideally, this information can help you to self-regulate your behavior. But what we learn from these studies is, yes, it's true, and it's really rewarding. People really, really like that if they get this information, and then the group process is going smoother or better after that. But we have a lot of groups who are not able to use this information because they just don't have the social skills or don't apply these social skills in this situation. This is still another group awareness tool. This is about knowledge, where you self-assess your knowledge on different aspects. Well, we'll not go into detail here. But these group awareness tools are soft methods. Effectiveness is there, especially for social processes. So I think if it's about talking less or talking a little bit more, then it helps. If it is about, you should be more critical, formulate counter arguments, it's not enough to typically, even in higher education, to use these types of feedback. Our approach here was, or has been for a long time now, collaboration scripts as a kind of scaffolding for small groups. So this is a relatively content independent or domain independent support that prompts, sequences, and distributes cognitive and social learning activities, as well as collaboration roles or collaborative roles among members of a small group. And I will show you the background of this in a minute. Is that still okay for you, or am I too fast? Any questions so far?
No, thank you. It's perfect. So I can offer Professor Fischer, as you wish, we can have the question and answer part after you talk, or if you would like to have it while you're presenting, I could coordinate the questions and could interrupt accordingly.
Yeah,
Is there
both,
a preference?
both is fine for me. Both is fine. So I still have some ideas here in the presentation, some slides to go. I will go on, and you just interrupt me if you have questions, or if you think that's maybe we should start a discussion rather than going into even deeper into this.
Thank you.
The basic idea here with collaboration scripts is that we all have internal collaboration scripts. So we have knowledge on collaboration that we learn quite early on and continue learning over the life course in different cultures or different cultural encounters, in different personal interactions. These collaboration scripts are knowledge structures that help individuals to understand specific collaborative situation and also to act in these situations. And there's a longer tradition of this research on scripts, but we have a slightly different take on these scripts. So what we, well, there are obviously culturally shared scripts within one culture or even across several cultures. These types of presentations seem to work over many different cultures in the academic realm, that one person is speaking, the others are seemingly listening, doing maybe something else, we don't know. And you are not, well, I invite you to ask questions. You would not, for example, switch on your microphone and tell something about what happened yesterday evening when you watch television or something. That would be strange. And so this is some knowledge that we don't learn normally. We don't learn it explicitly, or we learn it very early in our childhood. But this is knowledge that we have at our disposal if we enter new collaborative situations. And my claim here is that this knowledge helps us in many situations, but in many professional situations, we need to learn in addition to what we already have as collaboration scripts. So this is our conceptualization, well, a graphical representation of this, what a script is. We assume that there are several levels. It's a hierarchical network of knowledge, which has a goal level, or what we call a play level. So what is the theater play, let's say, if you want this metaphor, or the script, the film script, let's say, what is the overall plot of it? And then you have scenes in this plot, and then there are little scriptlets that help you to perform appropriately in these different scenes. But these scriptlets are tied to roles, typically different roles that act in scenes, but not only in one scene, but these roles transcend different scenes. So a play has roles, and sometimes even different plays, like different theater pieces, have similar roles. And the idea here is, so this is based on the dynamic memory model of the later Roger Schenk, I need to say. So this is a typical script. This is the old perspective on scripts. So there is the visit at dentist. This is the play. The role is the patient's role. And this is, in some cultures, it looks like this: entering an office, showing an insurance card, wait, treatment, say goodbye. Ideally, this is sometimes the case. But even you can go onto a scripted level. What is it enough to tell people, go into this room and wait? Or do we need to even instruct people what to do there or what not to do there? And so this is the scripted level. So enter this room, greet if someone is sitting there already, and then maybe scan magazines, or nowadays you would also use your mobile to act on some communication. And and often it's enough if there are little prompts. Sometimes it's even enough to have this prompt. Yeah, you open the dentist door and this knowledge is activated. But what if you enter a lawyer's, I hope that you are not entering a lawyer's office too often, unless for professional reasons. And so you are not so often there. And well, then you see a door, you enter the office. There's also such a kind of counter thing, reception. And then you need to wait. There is counseling, say goodbye, but there's also a waiting room, and you can use your knowledge from the doctors, from the dentists, even in the waiting room sometimes of a lawyer. So the idea here is that you reuse these little components of knowledge, and they are considered to be quite flexible if you use it quite often in different situations. So, and then what does that mean here? So if people enter this situation, now people have some experiences with this type of social media collaboration, but you often enter into situations where you don't, well, immediately, where you do not immediately know what to do. And then you use, this is the idea, you use types of more general collaboration knowledge and apply it in these situations. And so just to go a little bit deeper into this, please discuss now for 10 minutes. This is what we often do in our higher education seminars. Now that it's online, it's even more the case, yeah, go into breakout rooms and discuss for 10 minutes. This is a play level scaffold. So this is really on the dentist level or lawyer level. And what we did, for example, with these little cases, with these text cases, we provided people a peer feedback script that asked them to individually analyze a case. Then the other two provide a constructive critique. And then the first case analysts need to reply. And then in the end, even need to revise the initial analysis. So this is a kind of peer feedback script that we gave them, and this is an external script. So these are prompts what to do. So this is a scene level script. So we have the overall idea of analyzing these cases and diagnosing or intervening, but then we have scenes like doing an analysis, receiving feedback, revising, receiving feedback, revising. See, these are scenes, and the question is this scene level scaffolding, is this already enough? This is how we implemented it. So it was just if they pressed the reply button, then on an argument, they were only able to write a counter argument. And if they press the reply button on counter argument, then it was an integration. And what we see here is this little intervention already helped that 20% of arguments were followed by counter arguments, by meaningful counter arguments. So this is how a scene level script works. This is even going deeper. This is a scriptlet level scaffolding. So this is when we ask people to write a counter argument or a critique, and they don't know what we mean by this. Yeah? We don't mean to insult the initial analyzer, of course. Yeah? We mean something else, and this is what we explain here. There is a claim, there is warranted data, there are some qualifiers. Doesn't matter so much why this is the case, why we need that here, but we help them to construct their counter argument. Then we are on the scriptlet level scaffold. We help individuals to improve their contributions to collaboration. And this is what we did in this full-scale simulator. We gave students, because overall, there are 12 or 15 of these crisis resource management skills, as they call it, strategies. For example, one is, if you have an instruction for someone, always use his or her name. Don't just give an instruction to the whole group. It will not work. And this is very, very simple general heuristics that work in medical situations, also in aviation. They use it from time to time. And but there are many of them, like 15. And so what we did is we gave students sitting here in front of these screens, we always gave them 2 or 3 only of these heuristics to observe it, take notes, and then before they enter the debriefing room, they sit together in groups of 2 or 3 and exchange. So have an explanation of, well, I observed the, well, name-telling heuristics, if you wish, skill. And in this, that there was no situation where they could have called a name. They always did it. Or I thought that this was a situation where even a failure or mistake resulted from not telling the name, because two people went out of the room and tried to find this little machine that they were that they were in need of. So there was one person who was not there, who was urgently needed in this situation, and this was a mistake. So they explained to each other which skills they observed. They pointed to situations where they thought they could have implemented the two colleagues in the simulator itself could have applied it more explicitly or more intensely, or where they did it well. And then they have an exchange on this for 5 minutes, and then they went into the debriefing room, and then the whole situation was changed, or because the students who were activated in this and had an early exchange, they also were asking questions. The chief doctor was not having the floor all the time, so it was more like a 50-50 distribution and a lot of questions, and also better learning outcomes resulting from this. So this pre-structuring, and the pre-structuring here was on the scene level. We asked them to observe, we asked them to go into small groups and then go into this bigger group. But we also went down to the scripted level. We asked them what to observe and how to report to their colleagues. And this worked well out here. This worked out well here. This is what we did in this situation, in this teacher education situation. We had students working alone on this video, and they were putting little flags onto the video where they thought, well, this is where they could have applied an apprenticeship approach more explicitly or more systematically. And then they went into small groups with the flags. Sorry, here is only, or is it? No, yeah, here you only see the flags of one person, but you have different colors for different persons. So if two people sit together, you have differently colored flags, and you have flags that sit quite closely together, where the two of them in their individual analysis had the very same feeling about certain situations, and some flags that were sitting all alone into a period of like 15 minutes. And so they were, and then students were asked to resolve that, to discuss whether which ones of these are really the important ones or the ones indicative of a misapplication of an instructional approach or something like that. And in addition, they had these scaffolds where they could, for example, click on the scaffold to also see the theory, the theoretical model of like cognitive apprenticeship of, so their instructional theories again. And they were even able, this was really an interesting thing in this simulation, and our teachers, our young teachers loved it. They were able to look into the heads of the students here and of the teachers. So we interviewed them afterwards, and so we have had transcriptions of what they said when they reviewed these very situations. So you can, for example, our participants in the simulation can see here the teacher made a joke, and there was no laughing about this joke because no one understood, and the teacher was had developed feelings of, well, even a little bit of aggression, because she thought this was an easy thing everyone could understand, and they were intentionally not laughing at this joke, so impolite behavior, and they were not really understanding. They were not even understanding that she was trying to make a joke, and you can learn this from exploring that more deeply. And so the collaborators used these, first they used these scaffolds alone, and then they worked together with these flags, and the flags more or less structured their collaboration. So, and this is the last thing last simulation that I would like to show. So we had a lot of troubles of young, so these are still medical students, but they are in their 7th semester, so they have 3.5 years of studies already behind them, so they know a lot about medical content. This is the simulation with different patient cases. They read a health record, then they are supposed to ask the radiologist for some tests, And then they are supposed to make a decision or make a diagnosis on alone. Here, this is the interface. The interface I already showed to you. So this is what the test that is required, that the internist can ask for, and is a kind of reasoning behind that. So why do I want to see these tests? So this is information shared with the radiologist, and the radiologist can refuse making this test because, for example, if there is no information whether a female patient is pregnant, he will never do an X-ray picture. So this is prohibited by law. And but many young students, they don't know or they don't think about this, and so they learn here. And so what we gave them is what we call an adaptive collaboration script. If they fail in their initial collaboration, they receive adaptive prompts if they share insufficient information. So, for example, they forget to share this information that the patient that they were asking the patient for pregnancy, or also that they ask for a test that comes with a lot of radiation, and you can have a much simpler test with much less radiation with the same type of results. And you need to know this. And if you choose the wrong test, you receive information about this, like meta knowledge, also about the legal regulations, in order to help our students to share the more relevant information and ask for more relevant evidence generation by the radiologist. And also this type of collaboration script had positive, strong positive effects on learning. So my last point, we can also skip this. I can come to the conclusion so that we have enough time for discussion, but I have not led you through a lot of results yet, but just more showing the types of simulation. We did meta-analysis, several meta-analysis. One of them is on computer-supported collaborative learning, where we looked on the effects of these collaboration scripts in very different situations with respect to the content process, the learning process, the content quality, and also the social quality, and with respect to learning outcomes, domain specific, so in medicine, for example, or domain general, communication, argumentation, like this. There's a broad, spread over, these are the effect sizes. Here I can go into more detail here in these studies. So we even have some studies with negative effects of scripts, but most of them had rather positive effect of, and there are some with really huge effects, but most of them are here in an area under 1 standard deviation between the means, which is also plausible. Most meta-analysis yield these type of information. So what we found is these types of collaboration scripts, if we take all of them together, they have positive effects, significant effects, but rather small effects on domain-specific outcomes. So if it's about learning of how much medication should go into this patient, then then it's a small effect. It's a positive effect, but it's a small one. You have much bigger effects on things like this communication, like these crisis resource management skills, like more domain general, domain. It's more like cross-domain outcomes. Let's say they are not really. We don't know whether they are general or not. So the effects are much bigger here, and we had also, Freidis Vogel did this work. We did an analysis on the different levels. So where, if you need to structure collaboration in simulations, so where do you address, where do you target your scaffolds, your external collaboration script at? And so is it the play level? So is it enough to say now discuss? Or do you address the scene level? Well, will you say, well, it's now the time for formulating a counter argument in this discussion? Or will you even tell people, well, if you want to formulate a counter argument, you can attack the claim, you can also attack the data or the evidence that someone, the reasons that and you can attack the warrant even. Yeah, there are different levels to attack or to address an argument with a counter argument, and you can give this information. You can also to students. So this is what the meta-analysis here showed, that we had with respect to the content quality and the social quality, there are different outcomes. With respect to the content quality, so if you want to improve the content learning, the domain learning, let's say, with using collaborative scripts, then the scene level seems to be the optimal level of facilitation. So it's often enough to have a simple play, let's say a simple collaboration, a collaborative situation where you just say, well, do five minutes, you do this, and then the next 10 minutes you do that, and then the last 5 minutes you do that again. That seems to be good for the content learning. But if it's about social learning, so learning of these argumentation skills, of interaction skills, then the play level is really helpful. So activating knowledge on the play in the learner's minds. Also use prompts on the scene level that helps them to structure this play in different scenes. But also typically they need to have activated knowledge on the scripted level. So typically this is not, this does not need to be explained on a detailed level, but it needs to be activated. You need to think as an instructor where in the learner's collaborative knowledge from other fields do I have these elements that I need here, and activate this together with other elements to form a new script for a new type of situation. So it's not so much of transmission of new information, but it's more like an activation of existing prior knowledge in a situation together. So in conclusion, for collaborative learning to be effective, not any kind of interaction is equally instrumental. I thought to convince you with this ICAP logic here that especially for skills, for collaboration skills, problem solving skills, you need to consider interactive and constructive rather than only active and passive activities. Effective social processes, and there is a lot of research around explanations, thought-provoking questions, these cognitive conflicts, especially together with argumentation, not so much as standalone things because they do not happen so often. The modeling of cognition and of peer feedback under certain conditions. So collaboration has a very high potential to lead people into interactive activities, but I hope that became clear, it doesn't need to be the case. So if you put people into a small group and you have 1 or 2 people speaking all the time and the others listening, then you have the others being in a passive activity mode, or maybe even active if they take some notes, and you have 2 of them in a small group being on a constructive and interactive level. And I think this is the right perspective to analyze group processes, to look what the individuals are doing, because they are learning between their ears. Yeah? They need to memorize things also between their ears, and they will do this in a much better way if they are involved in these socially interactive processes. Sometimes this simple support for group self-regulation is enough. This is a softer, smoother, often smoother tool. Many students accept this they are very likely to accept this and like this information. They are fascinated where do they know how much I talked about, how much I contributed and so on. And they are fascinated, but many students cannot really use this. So maybe they need to be trained in this as well. But I think the more straightforward way to helping people to collaborate initially in new situations is with scaffolding, with more explicit scaffolding like collaboration scripts. As I said, targeting the scene level is effective for domain learning. So for many situations, if you have a play and a scene, that's enough. People know what to do, and they even don't like to be structured on these more fine-grained levels. So often you have even reactant behavior. So if you know what to do, people will let you know that they know what to do and don't need to be instructed for the little with sentence starters or question types or something like that if they already know what that is. For strategy learning, problem solving and so on, including collaboration skills, you need to address all of these levels, and you need to address the interactive and the constructive level. So I was talking about simulations as approximation of practice, and I hope to be able to speak much more about this with you, or to discuss this more with you. I thank you for this long phase of attention online. I know that this is hard. I hope that something came across and that you have many questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Fischer. It was indeed very deep, and we learned a lot. So, and yes, we have a list of raised hands, and so I try to coordinate the questions due to the research field also. So I know that one of our colleagues, Vina, please colleagues, please forgive me if I cannot take the order of the first posted question, but maybe more the closeness to the research field. So in that case, I would like to invite Vina. She's one of our colleagues at the Department of Social Work, but she works also at the Center for Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality. And Vina, kindly share your question with Professor Fischer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Very informative session, sir. So I'm Veena. I'm working in collaboration of self-help groups in India. I would like to ask you, like, since the self-help group, they are a group of women who is from a very marginalized society. So we already have a set of guidelines in which how an SHG have to work. So can I consider that as a collaboration script, and can I assess the collaborative capacity of SHGs based on that?
Can you go a bit more into detail what these women are supposed to learn or to do?
They have to engage in microfinance activities. They have to save money together, and they can sanction loans if they require. And they can be also involved in income generating activities, like they can start an small scale businesses. So the bank can sanction loans, like if they have this kind of savings. So the government already have set of guidelines in which how an SHG has to function. If they are involved in microfinance, what about the amount that they can save? How are they planning to give loans? So they have all the guidelines, but some SHGs will fail after a few years. So then we realized that it is due to lack of collaboration between the SHG members. So how we can reinforce that then? How will you prove that? And again, how we can recommend how to make an SHG sustainable?
Very interesting. Thank you. Very interesting field. So I think that, well, if we speak about collaboration scripts, often this approach is used for analyzing collaboration in the first place. So if you see, not sure if I got it 100% correct, that it is more like an issue of collaboration among colleagues than between customers and the professional. Is that so? Is that
yes,
more like an
Yes, there will be a lot of internal conflicts that are happening between the members, and because of that, they fail. The whole SHG group is affected.
Yeah. So one approach could really be to try analyzing together with these women what internal collaboration scripts they bring into the situation, and very often, more often than not, people have different internal collaboration script that they activate in this situation. So if there is no very clear, if there is no subscribed, or what is that, no prescribed, if there is no prescribed sequence of activities, and there's a new type of situation and it's highly complex, then people bring into this situation quite different knowledge on collaboration from different areas, and that one reason might be that they bring different expectations. So they have different roles, or have different understandings of roles. They have different understandings of the whole play. They have different understandings of the scenes. So we did that a couple of times, especially in medicine, because there's a lot of conflicts between these subdisciplines in medicine. Yeah? They have not much appreciation of each other because they are so stupid in formulating their requests and so on. This is a management of expectations, and we learned that this very simple structure of play, scenes, roles, and scriptlets work quite well to identify the different knowledge that is activated in the situation. And then from there, I think what I learned with colleagues also from medicine, but also from teacher education, that it's not so much that you as an external, in a way, develop this script, but try to develop an external script with these participants. So by listening to them, what they thought is an issue of this in this conflict, and then develop some scaffolds, maybe even, yeah, some help, some like a checklist or a couple of questions that they need to go through to help them activating an appropriate kind of knowledge, and also kind of more homogeneous kind of knowledge on collaboration for this situation. And then, well, revise maybe these types of external scaffolds that you create, and then also fade them out. So if it's no longer needed, of course, they don't need these checklists anymore. This was what came to my mind with respect to groups, collaborators that are already in place. This is what we did there. So doing an analysis, but then involving these people very densely, very intensely, to also look at these, also learn these, because script terminology is quite simple. You only need these 3 or 4 terms, and then analyze your own collaboration, and then develop some support for your own collaboration. And for learning this, I mean, in the first place, so creating little simulations around maybe typical conflicts that you have now. Not sure if you can really use them together with faces of women, question of authenticity, or if you have actors playing these roles or so. You can have scenarios where people are prepared to situations like this. So where they maybe can act as one of these persons suddenly being confronted with an aggressive type of statement, or with a very basic question on the meaning of this all, what I did or something, and then to react properly or react appropriately to this by understanding, okay, we have different roles in mind now. So I see myself in a role, and this other person is not seeing me in that role, or I'm seeing us in this scene where we are coming to a conclusion, where she is seeing us in a situation where we are just trying to explain the current issues and so on. So we need to first agree on the scene that we are in, on the roles that we are having, and then we can move on. So that might be helpful also if you develop this type of, let's say, script conflicts or inappropriate scripts in a way, if you can identify these typical proceedings that run into conflicts, and you use them in simulations, but then offer your learners some scaffolding for acting more appropriately in this situation. That would be an idea.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you
so much. Thank you so much for that great support, Professor Fischer. So I would like to invite now Deepu. And Deepu is one of our team leads, technical team leads, and he's working with virtual reality currently with his team. So Deepu, you kindly share your thoughts. Thank you very much. And kindly, I request, keep yourself short. We have a lot of questions and a restricted time. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can also activate your video if you can. I know sometimes technical it's not possible, but then it's more a personal interaction also, if I may request that.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Fischer, for the wonderful talk. So basically, I am part of a multidisciplinary team. Basically, we are making haptics VR simulators or combination of haptic VR simulators to give training on motor skill training. Like we have made pipe cutting simulator, bar bending simulator, which are basically looking to develop motor skill training on vocational education. So right now we got a chance to work on. So almost all the devices that we developed here was single person motor skill training. But right now we got a chance to work on a collaborative work, which is also in the construction industry. If you heard about the scaffolding work in the construction industry, which is a temporary work or temporary structure that will support on the construction to the construction workers for masonry, concreting, electrical, plumbing, all other stuff. So basically there are different types of pipes. They will assemble the different types of pipes and make the temporary structure, and then they will stand on the workers will stand on the scaffold, and then they will do the painting or carpentry or whatever the work. And after the work, the temporary structure will be dismantled. So this is a collaborative work. Based on the subject matter expert, we got it from the construction industry. Minimum 3 to 4 members would need to work on that. So there are different technological challenges that we are facing because to incorporate multiplayers in virtual reality. So, so in that aspect, what are the different thoughts or suggestions to go forward with the multiplayer functionality or collaborative work for motor skill training?
So first of all, let me say this is of course fascinating and cutting edge technology work. I would be happy if we had these also the possibilities here. I think this is also great for these types of vocational training, also with the idea of scaffolding, so that there is some guiding structure that is then removed. I mean, one of the main issues in making instruction or making the support adaptive is who decides to remove it and how is it removed or faded in even. Yeah? So there are people saying, well, people are frustrated typically if they know something already, and then there is an external guidance forcing them to do it in a certain way, which is typically the case with technology. So there is only 1 or 2 ways with a small bandwidth of degrees of freedom, let's say. And so an initial question could be whether you start without the scaffolds and fade them in when they are needed. This is what I try to show with this script for the radiologist and the internist, well, the internist, where they first have no script, no support, and the system tries to identify the issues. Is it that the internist, the young student, doesn't know the legal constraints or the legal situation that the radiologist is acting in? Or is it something else? Is it that the student shares all that he knows or she knows from the initial findings, and the radiologist is not willing to read all this? He or she wants to have these 1 or 2 aspects only. So my point is, if you have a student who has already been part of this and is doing that well, he doesn't need this type of script. And who is deciding to fade it in, to fade it out? Is it fading in, or is it fading out, or is it fading in and fading out of the scaffolding? And what we learned is automated. So you need very good rules for simple scripts, and you need very good machine learning algorithms to make that really smooth and adaptive. More often than not, people are disappointed of the adaptivity because they suddenly miss this guidance, and they will let you know later on, or they will not even notice it, but the system has misdiagnosed the skill of the learner. So the question is, who is doing that? And that would be one of the questions. And the other question would be, is it the case if you have, so the situation later on is that you have 3 learners or 3 people, professionals working together, and the simulation is training them or is enabling them to learn to collaborate with other people, but they are alone in this simulation? Or is this a simulation where they work together as 3 people already in the simulation? This is my question.
Sir, this is for training the students. So there are different training institutes. There are a lot of training institutes are available all over the world, even though most of the training institutes here in India, there are a lot of construction training institutes are available. So most of them were approached us to make something or some simulators in this area. So almost we contacted with different subject matter expert, and they all are asking us like the main issues are like this. If I am an expert in scaffolding work, I can do all the things in ground floor, but this will be the floor will be increased. Like somebody wanted to make some scaffold on a 40th floor or 100th floor, then the height of issue will be very much problem to them. So that is why this virtual reality comes to this part. So the multiplier or as I mentioned already, 3 to 4 members need to be there for making this assembling of the scaffold for that temporary structure. So if somebody is not educated or well trainer, then that will affect the effect to making the temporary structure. So these are the and also the trainer or the trainees need to be the outcome of the simulator is they have to become a good training using this virtual reality simulator.
Mm-hmm. So
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
I think, if I may add, I think what he means is that both the expert and the novices are all within the same simulator, and they all have to work collaboratively to achieve some particular end effect. But they're all within the simulation, and there's nobody really outside watching it, and it's physical manipulation and communication, all that's happening within the same scenario. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think.
So, my question then would be whether so is there an issue with the collaboration? Is the collaboration itself an issue, or is that quite clear? If there are the issues, then I would also suggest first to move to the more practical situation and look what the difficulties in this practice. What are the real difficulties in collaboration? Is it that the expert is not explaining on the level of the novices, or are the novices not listening? Are the novices not able to collaborate with the other novices? And to start developing a collaboration structure, a collaboration scenario from there. Maybe you have already done this. I guess that, this is what came to my mind, to think of scenarios in your simulation that in this meaning of approximation of practice, especially situations that is also for the women that we were talking about earlier, that maybe are not coming up very often. So typically, if you do an internship there, you will not see it and you will not be part of it because it happens only once a year or so. But if it's happening, it's really strange and it's really problematic maybe, and it's a huge issue. And you pick this and make it a scenario so that people can collect their experiences with. So looking for these critical situations, maybe this is one thing, and also looking for very typical situations, so things that are repeated or repeating itself, so that this can be reflected in such a scenario. Not sure if this is really, because I'm not fully grasping, I think, Deepu, what the issues of collaborations are there, but I start to be able to imagine the virtual reality simulation. I would really love to see it.
For sure, Professor Fischer. Thank you, Deepu, for the question. So in one of our follow-up meetings, surely we will present you what we are going to do at the lab and where we stand, so that we can also discover further spots for collaboration. So thanks again. So Dr. Fischer, just Professor Fischer, just to check on your timing, we have a lot of questions. How much time more would we have, so that I can accordingly coordinate the question and answer list?
Yeah, basically I have another meeting at 9, but I could tell them that I come 15 minutes later. It's a
9 is in 2 minutes in Germany.
Yeah,
all right.
in Germany.
So maybe we can extend 10 minutes.
Yeah, I will tell them that I will be back in a minute. I will just let them know I will have another 15 minutes if that is okay.
Okay, yeah, we have already altruistic chat post that, ma'am, you can skip my question, so we can really shift that. Thank you, Abhijit, to another session with Professor Fischer. So now I know that 2 of further colleagues would have questions, which is my colleague Yamuna and Shividya. So if you kindly then, oh, Yamuna said, please skip my question too. All right, then Shividya, would you kindly share your question? Thank you.
I think the last answer kind of clarified some of Shividya's questions, but
yeah, actually
clarified.
All of the previous answers clarified my.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Then my colleague, Dr. Sophia, also would have a question, a very practical question, because we are working also at the Department of Social Work, and we are teaching social work students. And Sophia, would you, in a nutshell, just shortly share your question? And then I would also like to ask Krishnail. He has a question, a cultural question, which I find really also very interesting. So very shortly, please, Sophia.
Yes, hello, I'm Sophia. I'm teaching at the social work program, and right now all the courses are online because of the university is closed because of the pandemic, and I use the breakout rooms a lot, and then I divide them into small groups and they're discussing, and I can join the breakout room, and I see all of them are happily discussing, usually in Malayalam, so I have no idea what they're saying, and so I don't really know how good the collaboration is with the students. And I'm just wondering how I can find out, or how I can make it explicit, how I can make these collaboration scripts for the social work students. So thank you.
Yeah. So it's a very good point. So we recently did a review on distance learning, and so there are several meta-analyses that came out recently with respect to computer-supported collaborative learning. And one of the things with discussion groups and distance teaching, distance education is that you can have even greater effect than in regular learning situations if you have the collaboration structured well. And if the collaboration is functioning, you can have even better collaboration in these online situations if you use it right. And so I think that if there are not too many groups and you can really visit them, I think it might be also good to maybe to ask them for doing that in a language that you also understand, so that you can really see. I think the important thing is to know whether they are discussing on topic or not, and whether. And I think what you can observe is, for example, if you have without a script, typically you have in four people groups, you have 2 people, 1 or 2 people talking and 2 people listening. Might be a cultural thing, but in our place we have international programs, and we typically have these. And there are people, even it might be an intercultural thing for some people not to speak up in these groups, and so this is where these collaboration scripts really work out very well. So if you tell people, so this is the plan, you can even put little instructions into breakout rooms in Zoom, for example, where you say, okay, now first thing, everyone use 2 minutes to develop an own perspective on this. And then there is a phase where you have, for example, 2 people sharing these ideas. Everyone speaks up and shares the idea. And then they agree on one of these or on a joint version, whatever it is. And then and then the two are merged and they discuss, and then they already have 4 perspectives, and then they need to merge it, and then they may present it in a way in a plenary session or so. Then you can be quite sure that you have all of them participating, and that you have, yeah, first of all of them participating. And the second thing is that you instruct, that you help them to also go onto the interactive level, so that they need to, if you ask them, for example, to compare 2 things that you have not compared so far, 2 approaches, 2 theories, or 2 cases, or if you ask them for examples, they should develop examples. Everyone should develop an example, and then afterwards they present their example, and 1 or 2 others criticize this example with respect to, is it really a good example for this, or what would be a better example? And then they need to decide for the best example, or for the 2 best examples, or for a good and a not so good example, for example. And then they move with this, they move back into the plenary, so that you can see, okay, from what they bring, that this most probably might have been on a quite good level. You see it from the example that they selected. And what you see from jumping into the group, even if they talk in a language that you don't understand, you can see the participation, I think. Yeah? You can see whether all people contribute, and whether they follow a kind of script, or whether someone is left out of this collaboration.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. So then last question, and then I would like to invite also Dr. Sid to share his thoughts as a last, but not least, statement for today's session. So Krishnil, just in a nutshell, you have a question regarding to cultural differences and scripting. So please share your question shortly. He's one of our PhD students, by the way. Yeah. Krishnil? I'm not sure if he's still there. So then, yeah, I am skipping him. Unfortunately, he's not responding, but that's okay. We will have hopefully more opportunities. And Dr. Sid, so I'm handing over to you to find, as usual, wonderful closing up words for today's session before we end it. I'm already a little bit sad, I must say.
just maybe one word, sorry, Sid, to this intercultural question. I would really like to discuss that at some point. We are not really far with this. There is some research on cultural differences with respect to these scripts for discussions. So we compared Japanese and Finnish and German students, for example, but we haven't let them discuss together. Yeah. So this is, I think, but we have that always in our international master's programs. We have people coming from, and now they are not even coming to Munich, they are sitting still in their places wherever they are. And then we put them together in groups, and I observe this, but it's only anecdotal. I would love to go deeper into this, but we haven't so far.
Thank you, thank you. So Sid, handing over to you.
Okay, first of all, thank you very, very much for an interesting, wide-ranging talk, really. And so I have all kinds of questions, but if it's all right with you, I'll write them rather than ask them here. But there's something that I did want to say about what people can take away from what it is that you spoke of in work that's being done at AMMACHI Labs, and potentially, if it's something which interests you, to find ways for working together between your group and our group. So one thing,
I think we have connectivity issues.
Who are working in social work, And I think what's happening is that, or maybe what's not happening, is that it's possible that the students are not being worked with about being more sensitive to collaborative learning. I think that that's really a skill that's extremely important for anybody who's a social worker when you're working with groups. The second is to work with self-help groups in the field, in the villages. And what you're talking about is, I think, important also, for people to be sensitive to what it is that's happening in the interactions among people. And it would be wonderful if those who are working with the master's degree students in social work and the self-help groups, if they could get some sort of education and training about being sensitive to the issues that you brought up, about the kind of interactions that are taking place among the people that you're working with. That's at the practical level, sort of applied level. And there are other parts which are more at the theoretical level, but I won't go into them now. It'll take too much time. You've been generous with your time. You told your colleagues, or you asked your colleagues to hang on a little bit before you get there. So I don't want to have you be even later because of the questions that I have at the level of theory. And as I said, if it's all right with you, I'll write to you and we can have correspondence about them. So the fact that there were so many people who had questions in the chat is a sign that what you're talking about resonated with issues that they have and problems that they have. And, you know, who could ask for anything more as a,
Yeah, I see also Professor Bhavani, Dr. Bhavani showed or activated her video with two of our colleagues. One is Sarala ma'am and the other one is Shrividya. I just used the time set where you had connectivity issues. So yeah, don't want to interrupt you. Anyways, we have 10 minutes after 9 in Germany. Yeah, and then I invite Dr. Bhavani just to share her thoughts in one sentence, and then promise Professor Fischer will let you go.
Thank you, Dr. Fischer. We all were like so interested in the talk, and we were like discussing the points that you were mentioning, what we were understanding, what we're not understanding. We still have a lot of questions, and we do so hope that there would be ways that we can work with you. We could collaborate with you in the future, and that would be wonderful for us, because I see there's just so much of synergy in our work and so much overlap and we have so much to learn from you, and we would be so grateful for your guidance. And thank you so much for your talk. Really enjoyed it. I appreciate it. Made us think and discuss a lot over here at this time. Thank you from all of us here, all three of us here. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavani. So my apologies, Dr. Sid, that due to the connectivity issues, your sentence got interrupted. But we will surely follow up, as you said. And having said that, again, thank you, Professor Fischer, for your time. And yeah, we are really looking forward for our next virtual encounter. And maybe we can welcome you even here one day in India. That would be wonderful. So have a wonderful day. Warm greetings to Germany, and all the best till to the next meeting. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Meltem, and thank you, Sid. Thank you, Bhavani, also for the kind words, also for, stating that this resonated in some ways with some of your work. So I see this as an initial step. And you were so kind to listen to me today. I would really love to listen to you as well, more than I could today. And I'm sure that Meltem and Sid and Bhavani, we will find a way to have a kind of workshop together or something where we can also go deeper into your work so that we can learn, and maybe parts of my group can join this, because I had my feeling is from already these initial talks to Meltem and Sid and Bhavani, that we can learn maybe more from you than you can learn from us, with respect to technology, with respect to real groups in real practices that matter. With respect to simulators, as you use them, with respect to so many things. So I'm really looking forward to go deeper into this collaboration, and we will find ways to also find good times for having our groups join.
Wonderful. Thank you very much also to the active audience. And I'm closing up, or we close up today's session. And Professor Fischer, I'm going to write you an email for a further meeting. So thank you very much. All the best. See you soon. Right. Also, dear colleagues, dear students, have a good day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.